I met Caleb at the cigar lounge down by the docks after work. It was late, and the harbor was quiet except for the occasional echo of footsteps on the weathered wood. Caleb had just gone through a nasty divorce, so he was in high spirits, finally free and all that. I wasn't sure what he wanted to show me, but he'd said it was important. I'm Tobias Marks. I'm 36, a tactical strategist for the U.S. Navy's Cyber Intelligence Division. My job involves a lot of quiet observation, patience, and knowing when to push and when to hold back. That night, though, I didn't need any of that. I was off duty, just hanging out with an old friend who needed a break from the memories of a failed marriage. Caleb was already there when I arrived, perched at the corner table with a whiskey and a thick cigar that left a spicy scent hanging in the air. He grinned when he saw me, raising his glass in greeting. "Glad you made it, man," he said, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. "I've been wanting to show you something." He pulled out his phone and started fiddling with it before I could even get settled. "You ever hear about this?" he asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "Military-grade dating app. Exclusive for cleared personnel. No civvies allowed." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a bad idea waiting to happen," I said, half joking. But Caleb was already deep into his demonstration, scrolling through a few profiles like he was flipping cards in a magic trick. "It's all vetted," he said, clearly impressed. "You have to have top-level clearance to get in. It's all verified. No fakes, no leaks." I tried to play along, but I wasn't really interested. I had a fiancée, Lana, and we were supposed to be getting married in a few months. So I leaned back in my chair, sipped my drink, and let Caleb ramble on about how this app was different. He handed me his phone, the screen glowing with bright profile pictures and witty little taglines. "Go ahead, man. Just scroll. You'll see what I mean." I didn't want to, but Caleb's grin was so infectious, I figured what the hell. I swiped up a few times, half distracted, until I saw a profile that made my breath stop cold. There she was. Lana. My Lana. Posing in a tight red dress I'd never seen. Eyes half-lidded in a way that felt cheap, staged, not the woman I thought I knew. The tagline read, "Engaged, but looking. Loyalty is a lie." For a second, the whole world felt like it had shifted off its axis. My chest went tight, but I kept my face calm. My training took over, the part of me that knew how to keep my breathing even and my hands steady. I handed the phone back to Caleb. "Looks like you've got yourself a real treasure trove here," I said, voice flat. I didn't want him to know what I'd seen, at least not yet. He was my friend, but this was personal. He laughed, oblivious. "Night? It's a gold mine, man." I forced a smile and took another sip of my drink. My mind was already racing, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Lana, my fiancée, the woman I was supposed to spend my life with, advertising herself to other men like it was some kind of game. I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in my gut. "Listen, I gotta take off," I said. "Early morning tomorrow." Caleb looked up, surprised. "So soon? We just got started." "Yeah," I said, managing a smile that didn't touch my eyes. "Another time." He didn't argue, just raised his glass again. "Sure, man. Another time." I left the lounge and walked down the docks, my steps automatic, my mind already spinning. My instincts were already shifting, moving from the shock of betrayal to the cold, hard logic I relied on at work. I didn't know what Lana was up to, but I knew one thing. I was going to find out. The night was cold, the fog rolling in from the water. I breathed it in, the chill bracing against the firestorm I felt inside. If Lana wanted thrill and danger, she was about to find out exactly what that meant. I spent the drive home replaying every word Lana had said in that profile, every image I hadn't seen before. My gut burned with questions, but my mind was already slipping into work mode. That's the only way I knew how to deal with something like this, like it was a mission. My apartment in Norfolk was small but secure, a holdover from my days of constant travel. It felt cold and sterile, and that night it matched the emptiness I felt inside. I dumped my keys on the counter and stood in the middle of the room, thinking. I had to be careful. I couldn't confront her without evidence, without knowing exactly how far this went. I sat down at my desk, opened up my laptop, and connected to the Naval Network. I had access to tools most people couldn't dream of: facial recognition databases, data aggregation software, secure servers that could run circles around civilian tech. I took a deep breath and created a new profile, Leon Bishop. A name I'd pulled from a retired colleague who'd left the game years ago, someone with just enough of a footprint to make the identity real but safe enough to keep me covered. Leon was a former combat medic turned private security consultant. Widowed, no kids, traveled a lot. Someone with enough of an edge to be interesting but not so perfect it looked fake. I scoured old records and built a digital trail, social media profiles, a few carefully edited photos of my retired buddy in military gear. Enough to make Leon real. Within the hour, I was ready. I logged back into that dating app using a burner phone and loaded up Leon's profile. I didn't have to wait long. Lana's profile popped up in the suggested matches almost immediately, like fate had set the table for me. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the heart icon. Then I tapped it. She responded within minutes. Her first message came in hot. "You're a new face. Where have you been hiding?" I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. I typed back, keeping Leon's voice casual and confident. "I just got back from a contract overseas. Needed a change of scenery." "Oh, a security man," she wrote, adding a winking emoji. "I like that. You must know how to handle yourself." "I know a few tricks," I replied. My fingers shook a little, but I kept typing. "You seem like someone who enjoys a little excitement." She didn't hold back. "Engaged, but looking." "Loyalty is a lie," she repeated, the same words from her profile. "Ever feel like that?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, trying to read between the lines. She was reckless, confident, or maybe just desperate for something she thought she couldn't find in me. "Depends on what kind of thrill you're after," I wrote back. "I'm not here to waste time." "That's what I want," she shot back. "No games. Just fun. No strings." We went back and forth for hours, her words getting bolder by the minute. She asked about my deployments, about what kind of work I did. I kept my answers vague, letting her fill in the blanks. She was more than willing to do that. By midnight, she was sending me her location, some bar in downtown Norfolk she said she liked to haunt. Her messages dripped with anticipation, every word another nail in the coffin of the life we were supposed to have together. I saved everything, every message, every timestamp, every little detail she let slip. My mind was split in two. Half of me wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there. But the other half, the part that had spent years in the field, knew better. I needed more. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the laptop screen casting shadows across my face. Lana was spinning a web of lies, and I was going to let her weave every inch of it. Let her think she had Leon Bishop wrapped around her finger. Let her think she was in control. She didn't know it yet, but I was going to find out everything. Every secret. Every betrayal. And when the time was right, I'd make sure she knew exactly who she was dealing with. For now, though, I typed one last message to her, my fingers steady. "Can't wait to see how far you'll go," I wrote. She sent back a photo, her lips parted in a smile I didn't recognize, eyes glinting with mischief. "You'll see," she wrote. I stared at that photo for a long time, the lie of it twisting in my gut. She thought she was playing a game. She had no idea I was playing one too. I didn't sleep much that night. The light from my laptop glowed in the dark as I worked. Every click of the mouse a step deeper into a world I wasn't sure I wanted to see. At dawn, I started setting up the mirrored phone access. It wasn't something I was supposed to do, but my clearance gave me tools most people didn't even know existed. I rerouted the data through a secure server, cloning Lana's phone activity in real time. Every text, every photo, every hidden app, mine to see. It took a few hours, but once it was up and running, I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my gut. She had no idea. While she was busy living her double life, I was watching it unfold from the other side of the screen. The first thing I found was a hidden folder in her photo library. Hundreds of pictures I'd never seen before. Some were selfies, smiling and carefree in places I'd never taken her. Others were more explicit. Poses and angles that made my stomach twist. There were also payment logs, Venmo, PayPal, and apps I'd never heard of. Money going to usernames I didn't recognize, some of them military aliases that I did. She wasn't just playing around. She was running a game. I leaned forward, heart thudding, as I started cross-referencing names. One of them was a name I knew all too well, Commander Reed Talmadge. My superior officer. My commanding officer. My mentor. Their chats were like a punch to the chest. Lana and Talmadge, talking in code that didn't feel like code at all. It wasn't just sex, though there was plenty of that in the messages. There were details about troop movements, deployment rotations, even rumors about weapons shipments. She was sharing classified information. She was turning pillow talk into espionage. I couldn't breathe for a second. My mind was spinning with questions. How long had this been going on? How much did she know? I read one exchange over and over. "Lana, we're supposed to be in Okinawa next quarter. That's what he said last night. Talmadge, good girl. Keep him talking. We'll get what we need." I leaned back in my chair, my hands shaking. The betrayal went beyond cheating. It was a threat to everything I'd sworn to protect. My job, my country, the men and women who trusted me to keep them safe. She was handing it all over like it was nothing. I felt sick, but I kept digging. More messages. More photos. Plans to meet up in secret, not just with Talmadge but with other men, some of them names I'd seen before in black market trading circles. A dishonorably discharged quartermaster named Blake Phelps. A defense contractor with a shady reputation. Connections that spread like rot through everything I thought I knew. For a while, I just sat there, staring at the screen, the weight of it pressing down on me. I thought about confronting her, ending it right there. But that wasn't my style. I didn't want just a confrontation. I wanted the whole story. I saved everything, every chat log, every photo, every transfer. I built a folder that laid it all out in cold, undeniable detail. I was going to use it when the time was right. At some point, I realized I was gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles were white. I let go, flexing my fingers, and took a deep breath. This wasn't just about Lana anymore. This was about national security, about lives that might already be at risk. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark, listening to the quiet hum of the apartment. My mind was clearer than it had been in days. If Lana wanted to play games, she'd pick the wrong man to play with. I was done watching. It was time to act. A couple days later, I set the trap. I arranged a meeting as Leon Bishop, the man she thought she was falling for. She'd suggested a place she liked, a hotel bar with low lights and high prices, the kind of place where she could feel dangerous without actually being in danger. I got there early, dressed in a charcoal blazer that didn't belong to me, wearing a face that wasn't mine. Leon's face. I set up the cameras in the corners of the room, disguised as part of the hotel's decor, small black domes that no one would look twice at. They were military grade, picking up every word, every shift in her smile. I ordered a whiskey but didn't drink it. My mind was clear, my focus sharp. I kept my phone on the table, ready to ping the cameras if I needed to adjust them. Then I waited. Lana walked in 15 minutes later, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. It was bright red, clinging to her like she knew exactly what she was doing. She scanned the room, eyes bright with excitement, and for a moment I saw the woman I thought I loved. The woman who used to tell me she couldn't wait to build a life with me. But that woman was gone. Or maybe she never existed at all. She spotted me, or Leon, and her smile widened. She walked straight to the bar and leaned in close, her perfume a familiar scent that twisted something in my chest. "Leon," she said, her voice low and playful. "You're even better looking in person." I forced a smile. "I'll take that as a compliment." She laughed, touching my arm lightly, the same way she used to touch me when she wanted something. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I was afraid you might think I was too much trouble." "Trouble can be fun," I said. "If you're careful." She ordered a martini and took a sip, her eyes never leaving mine. "So, what's your story?" she asked, leaning closer. I played the part perfectly, just enough mystery, just enough charm. I let her talk. Let her brag about how she liked living on the edge, how loyalty was just a word to her, how she played everyone in her life like they were instruments, and she was the conductor. I asked about her fiancé, me, and she laughed. "Oh, him? He'd never see it coming. I play him like a silent violin," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. I felt a flicker of something then. Anger, maybe. Or maybe just relief. Because in that moment, I knew exactly what she was. And she was telling me everything I needed to hear. I let her keep going, fishing for details without making it obvious. She talked about money, about secrets, about how some people were just too trusting. I was careful not to let any of it show on my face. But inside, every word she said was another piece of the puzzle, another crack in the illusion I'd been living in. After a while, I glanced at my phone and frowned, playing the part of the man who had to leave. "I have to cut this short," I said. Something came up. Lana pouted, leaning back in her chair. "So soon?" she asked. I was hoping for a little more excitement. I let a small smile touch my lips, but there was no warmth in it. "What would your fiancé say if he walked in now?" I asked, my voice soft but firm. She tilted her head, lips curling into a smirk. "He'd never see it coming," she said, her tone mocking. "I play him like a silent violin." I stood up then, my phone in hand, every second of her performance saved and waiting. "I'm sure he'll hear it soon enough," I said. She didn't understand what I meant, not yet. She just watched me walk away, confusion flickering in her eyes. Outside, the night was quiet. I leaned against the wall for a moment, breathing in the cool air. I had the evidence I needed. The video, the words, the truth she'd never wanted me to hear. As I walked back to my car, I knew one thing for sure. She'd set the stage for her own downfall, and I'd made sure the cameras were rolling. I spent the next few days piecing together everything I had. My apartment looked like a crime scene investigator's office, screens full of chat logs, folders stuffed with photos and payment receipts, maps marked with locations that didn't make sense until they did. Lana thought she was careful, but she had no idea how deep my reach went. I traced her payments to accounts in other states, accounts that didn't belong to her or Talmadge. Names started to pile up: weapons brokers, dishonorably discharged soldiers, a guy in Charleston with a long rap sheet for stolen munitions. It all pointed to the same thing. She wasn't just playing around. She was moving something, guns, maybe tech. She was using everything she could get from Talmadge and selling it to the highest bidder. And she wasn't doing it alone. One night, around 2 in the morning, I finally found the connection I'd been chasing. A series of transfers between Talmadge and a man I'd only ever heard about in whispers. A quartermaster named Judd Creighton, who'd been kicked out of the Navy for stealing weapons and selling them overseas. Creighton's name had come up in an old report I'd buried years ago, something about a missing shipment in Syria that turned into a massacre. I pulled up the file and stared at the date. It was the same week Lana was in D.C., working some PR event she said was all about networking and fancy dinners. I felt my stomach twist as I realized the overlap. I'd always suspected that ambush in Syria wasn't just bad luck. Now I had proof that it was an inside job, and Lana was right in the middle of it. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a second. I could hear her voice in my head, all that talk about excitement and danger. I wondered if she ever thought about the men who didn't come back from that ambush. If she even cared. Probably not. The next morning, I sat down and wrote out a timeline. Everything she'd done, every date and time I could match. Payments, meetings, messages with Talmadge that went from flirting to serious in the span of weeks. He'd let his guard down with her, and she'd used it like a weapon. I made another folder, labeling it black market dealings. Every piece of evidence went in there. Screenshots of encrypted chat apps, tracking data from her phone that showed she'd been in Charleston the same weekend as Creighton. Photos of cash deposits at ATMs all over the East Coast. I kept working, hour after hour, stopping only for coffee and the occasional bite of stale takeout. The anger kept me going, but it wasn't just anger. It was focus, a mission, my own personal operation to figure out exactly how deep this went. Every time I found something new, it felt like another betrayal. But at the same time, it felt like I was taking back a piece of myself. The part of me that believed in loyalty, in trust. By the end of the week, I had enough to sink Lana and Talmadge both. Enough to make sure no one would ever believe their lies again. I sat back, exhausted but calm. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about national security. About lives that had already been lost because of what she'd done. I looked out the window at the street below, feeling the weight of it all. The truth was ugly, but at least I wasn't in the dark anymore. I was ready for whatever came next. And I knew Lana wouldn't see it coming. The gala was at a luxury hotel downtown. The kind of place with marble floors and crystal chandeliers that made you feel small. Lana was the star of the night, hosting on behalf of the aerospace firm she did PR for, surrounded by military contractors and NATO liaisons in tailored suits. I walked in through the loading dock in the back, wearing a contractor's badge I'd printed the night before. My heart was steady, my breathing calm, training kicking in when I needed it most. In the AV room, I found the techs already setting up the presentation Lana had worked on for weeks. It was supposed to be a highlight reel of the firm's latest drone tech, a slick video meant to impress everyone in the room. But I had other plans. I plugged in a small drive, making sure the footage would start when the timer hit 0. The techs didn't look twice at me. I was just another suit in the background, another piece of the machine. 5 minutes later, I was standing in the back of the ballroom, drink in hand, watching Lana work the crowd. She was stunning, confident, graceful, moving from group to group like she was born to be there. She didn't see me. She didn't know I was already in the room, already taking control of her moment. The MC took the stage, tapping the microphone with a smile. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Our keynote speaker is someone you all know and respect. Please welcome Lana Bennett. The applause was polite, practiced. Lana walked up, her smile wide and bright under the stage lights. She launched into her speech, talking about innovation, security, the future of aerospace. I watched her closely. She had no idea she was seconds away from being exposed. The countdown on my phone hit 0. The video on the big screen flickered, then switched from the drone footage to something else entirely. First, her dating profile, provocative photos I'd never seen before. The tagline, engaged but looking. Loyalty is a lie. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Lana's voice faltered for a split second, but she recovered quickly, trying to keep talking. Then came the chat logs. Her flirty messages with Talmadge. Screenshots of money transfers, hotel meetups, half-dressed selfies she'd sent him. The final piece was a video clip from the hotel bar, the night she met Leon Bishop. My voice, her voice, the whole conversation about playing me like a silent violin. By the time the footage ended, the room was dead silent. Lana's face had gone pale, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for a way to explain it all. But there was nothing she could say. In the crowd, I saw military contractors and NATO reps checking their phones, murmuring to each other. Some were already walking out, shaking their heads. A couple of security guys moved toward the stage, whispering into their earpieces. The MC stepped up again, his face tight and professional. I think we need to take a short break, he said, and the lights went up. The ballroom erupted in chaos. guests talking in low voices, security pulling Lana to the side, her face a mask of shock and humiliation. I stayed back, blending in with the crowd as people started to file out. I caught her eye for a moment, and in that split second, I saw everything she'd tried to hide, every lie, every betrayal, laid bare in front of the people she'd tried to impress. She didn't say a word. She just stared at me, her eyes wide with something between fury and disbelief. I turned and walked out, my mind clear and calm. I'd done what I came to do. She'd wanted thrill and danger. She got it. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The lies were out. The game was over. And now, it was time for the final reckoning. The fallout from the gala hit like a bomb. Lana didn't try to reach out directly, but her lawyer did. I got the first notice in the mail 2 days later. She was suing me for cyber entrapment and character assassination. I wasn't surprised. It was classic Lana. Turn the story around, make herself the victim, and paint me as the monster who destroyed her life. But I was ready. I called in a favor with the JAG office, the Navy's legal team. My military lawyer, Commander Holt, met me in my office downtown. He was in his 40s, calm and precise, the kind of man who didn't waste words. Lana's lawyer is arguing you violated her privacy and defamed her in front of potential military contractors, he said, scanning the paperwork. They're throwing everything at you to see what sticks. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the tension in my shoulders. Do they have any actual evidence? Holt looked up, his expression dry. No, and they're about to regret coming after you. We filed a motion to dismiss. In our response, we laid out everything. How I gathered the evidence using legal means under the Military Fraud Prevention Act, which authorized me to investigate when there was a credible threat to national security. We included logs from defense servers proving my collection was done through approved channels. We also attached copies of the dating app's terms of service, showing that once Lana posted those photos and messages, they were considered public domain within that closed community. But the real nail in the coffin was the insurance paperwork I found buried in a folder in our home office. Lana had tried to change the beneficiary on my life insurance policy a month before the gala, without telling me. She forged my signature. I had the bank's confirmation, the email chain, and even the security footage from the notary's office where she tried to make it all look legitimate. Commander Holt put it all together in a single binder. He dropped it in front of her lawyer during the first hearing. Your client's in breach of federal law, he said quietly, his voice carrying just enough bite. This is going to get very expensive for her. Lana's lawyer looked like he'd just bitten into something sour. He stammered something about misunderstandings, but we both knew it was over. 2 weeks later, her legal team folded. They tried to negotiate a settlement, anything to make it go away. But I said no. I wanted it in court, on the record. The day we walked into the courtroom, Lana sat across from me, dressed in a conservative black suit. She looked smaller than I remembered, like all the bravado had been stripped away. The judge listened patiently as her lawyer tried to paint me as a manipulator. But when Holt stood up and laid out the security footage, the bank records, and the military logs, it was clear who was telling the truth. Lana's lawyer didn't even bother with a closing argument. He just sat there, shoulders slumped, as the judge dismissed the case with prejudice and forwarded the evidence to military courts for further review. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the cold spring air, feeling a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying start to slip away. Holt clapped me on the shoulder, his voice low and calm. You did what you had to do. Now let the military handle the rest. I nodded, my jaw tight. Lana had tried to turn my own investigation against me, but she underestimated how thorough I'd been. As I walked back to my car, I thought about everything she'd said in those messages, the talk about thrill, the lies about loyalty. In the end, she'd gambled on my silence and lost. She'd made me her enemy, and I'd made sure she couldn't hide from the truth any longer. The military court proceedings didn't take long to start. With the evidence I'd handed over, the Navy didn't waste any time. Talmadge was pulled in first, his face hard as stone as he was escorted past the press outside the base's legal center. Lana was next. She looked rattled, her hair pulled back tight, no trace of the woman who used to smile at me over coffee every morning. I was called in as a witness. I sat in the front row, my uniform pressed and my eyes steady as she took the stand. She looked at me once, her gaze flat and cold, then turned back to the judge. I wasn't unfaithful, she said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. I was in love with Leon. My fiancé didn't understand me. Leon did. The courtroom was silent, everyone leaning in to hear every word. She was so sure of herself, so sure she could spin this into a story about heartbreak instead of betrayal. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Then I stood and handed over the final piece of evidence, a file marked Operation Mirage. Every chat log, every photo, every GPS ping, and most importantly, proof that Leon Bishop never existed outside of my devices. The judge's face was impassive as he flipped through the folder. Lana kept talking, her voice getting sharper, more desperate. I wasn't unfaithful, she repeated. Leon was real. I watched her closely. I didn't feel hate anymore. Just a kind of cold clarity. She built her entire defense on a ghost I'd created, and now she was standing there, exposed and alone. Commander Holt stood up, his voice quiet but firm. Leon Bishop was never real. The profile was created by Mr. Marks as part of a legitimate security investigation. Your Honor, the only person Lana was in love with was an illusion, one she fell for because she thought she could use him to get what she wanted. Lana's face crumbled for just a second. I saw it. Her mouth trembled, her eyes flickered with something like panic. But she didn't say anything else. She just stared at the floor. The judge closed the file and leaned forward, his voice calm but final. The court finds that Ms. Bennett engaged in a pattern of deceptive and criminal behavior, both personal and professional. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. He issued a restraining order against her, permanently barring her from contacting me again. He also ordered the evidence forwarded to federal prosecutors. I knew what that meant, more than just humiliation or job loss. It meant real charges. Prison time. As Lana was led out of the courtroom, she didn't look back at me. She didn't try to explain or apologize. She just kept her head down, her shoulders hunched like a woman carrying the weight of every lie she'd ever told. Outside, I stood in the cold air, watching as the military police took Talmadge away in cuffs. He didn't say anything either. Just stared straight ahead, his face pale and drawn. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. It didn't feel like a victory, but it felt like closure. Lana was stripped of her position at the defense PR firm. Talmadge was arrested on charges of treason. The world they'd built on secrets and stolen data had finally come crashing down. I took a deep breath, feeling the icy wind on my face. I didn't know what would come next for them, and I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt free. A week after the trial, I got my reassignment orders, Okinawa, Japan. It was a quiet post, one that would keep me away from the noise and the memories. I packed my apartment in silence, sorting through everything I owned like I was closing the final chapter of a book I never wanted to read again. The morning I was set to leave, I got a letter from the JAG office. It was short and formal. Commander Talmadge had been sentenced, dishonorably discharged, and charged with treason. Lana was awaiting trial in federal court, facing charges of conspiracy and fraud. I read the letter twice, then folded it and slipped it into my jacket pocket. It didn't bring me any satisfaction. It just felt final. I spent my last night in Norfolk back at the harbor, the same place where it all started. The docks were quiet, the water dark and still. Caleb met me there, a cigar already lit between his fingers. He looked older somehow, the lines on his face deeper than I remembered. Got your orders? He asked, his voice low. I nodded. Okinawa. He took a drag from his cigar and looked out at the water. Hell of a thing, he said quietly. You really think she knew what she was doing the whole time? I thought about it for a second. Yeah, I said. She knew. Caleb nodded slowly. Then she got what was coming. I didn't say anything. I just watched the smoke curl up into the night sky. After a while, Caleb turned to me, his eyes steady. So what now, man? You just move on. I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs. I'm not out for revenge, I said. She weaponized trust. I just returned fire. Caleb's mouth twitched in something like a smile. You always did know how to keep it simple, he said. We sat there in silence, sharing one last cigar, the smoke and the sea air mixing in the darkness. When it burned down to the end, we stood up. Take care of yourself, Toby, Caleb said, clapping me on the shoulder. You too, I said. I watched him walk away, his silhouette fading into the shadows of the docks. Then I turned and headed back to my car, the weight of the past finally starting to slip away. The next morning, I boarded a military flight out of Norfolk, the engines rumbling beneath my feet as we lifted off. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me in that city, no more secrets, no more lies. As the plane banked out over the Atlantic, I closed my eyes and let myself feel the quiet. A new post, a new country, a new start. It wasn't about running away. It was about moving forward. Justice had been served. The lies had been exposed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe.